What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, I'm going to discuss some of the best £4 million defenders that you might want to consider for your Game Week 1 squads. Usually, there's maybe one or two options that may or may not get minutes, but the way FPL have priced players this year, there's certain starters for £4 million, and that's what I'm going to discuss. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to check out Fantasy Football Hub using the links in the description below. Otherwise, let's get into it. All right, let's start with Leicester, probably the strongest team that came up from the Championship last season, although that doesn't always work out for the Premier League as we saw last year, because most people expected Burnley to be the strongest team and Luton ended up finishing above them. But with the info we've got to go on right now, Leicester probably are the strongest and probably stronger than any of the teams that did come up last year. Looking at the stats from the Championship, they were second best for expected goals conceded, 41.9, and the actual goals they conceded was 40. Only Leeds were a better defence than Leicester last year, so that is promising. With the fixtures, I would say there's some rough ones in there in the first 6 game weeks. So Spurs at home game week 1, Fulham away game week 2, Villa at home game week 3, then it's Palace away, Everton at home and Arsenal away. Now, to be fair, if you're buying a £4 million defender, it's usually your 5th choice defender that's going to be on the bench most of the time. And if it came down to having to use a transfer or possibly just playing a Leicester defender for Fulham away, Palace away or Everton at home, might not be the end of the world just to play them. And the nice thing is, once you get past those fixtures, if you're looking at more of a long-term strategy, they've then got Bournemouth at home game week 7, Southampton away game week 8, Forest at home game week 9, and Ipswich away game week 10. So in terms of a longer-term pick to sit on your bench, Leicester actually look pretty good. In terms of the options, Fas and Vestergaard played a lot last year as the centre-back partnership. So Fas played 43 games, 2 goals, and Vestergaard was 42 games and 2 goals as well. They have signed a Coley from Atalanta. Now, he didn't play for them last year. He's been on loan for the last 3 seasons, played 34 games the previous season, 0 goals, 0 assists, but he could be someone that comes in. Now, they're under new management with Steve Cooper, so we're not quite sure how they're going to line up. Is it going to be a back 4 or a back 3? If it's a back 3, all 3 of these £4 million defenders could play, but if it's a back 4, maybe a Coley comes in for one of Fas or Vestergaard. I believe, and I could be wrong, if you're a Leicester fan, let me know in the comments below, that Fas is probably the main man there. And if they don't make any more signings, he's almost certainly going to start the season. So I think a Leicester defender out of the 3 promoted teams probably looks pretty good. They do have other defenders you could look at, but then you're into the 4.5 million territory, like Ricardo Pereira, for example, and James Justin as well. And I'm just not sure it's worth spending that extra 0.5 when you can get one of their centre-backs for 4 million instead. As an example, right, James Justin, 2 goals, 2 assists, and Ricardo Pereira, 3 goals, 3 assists. They were a bit more attacking than the centre-backs, but not massively. These are not defenders you're going to play that often, and I think going for a £4 million defender looks pretty good. They do have other options there. Just to quickly, just got rid of the FPL page a second. Let me just bring it back up here. I think it's Connor Cody, who a lot of people obviously know from Wolves. He's there as well, but he didn't play a huge amount last year, but could play a few more minutes this year, potentially, if Cooper is more in favour of him over other defenders. And same with Suter, Harry Suter, he didn't play a huge amount either. So Fas and Vestergaard are probably the ones right now. Cody may have been bought to play a big part as well, but we'll have to wait and see in pre-season. But I think a Leicester defender out of the 3 promoted teams probably looks the best. And right now, if I had to pick one, it would probably be Fas. So we've got Ipswich next. They were the 3rd best defence in the Championship last season. It was 44.3 expected goals conceded. So not that much worse than Leicester. But in terms of the actual goals conceded, it was 51. So not quite as good, but potentially some promise there going into the Premier League this year. Their first 2 fixtures are terrible. Liverpool at home, Man City away. It doesn't get much worse than that. Then you've got Fulham at home, Brighton away, Southampton away, and Villa at home. So again, if you had to play one of your £4 million defenders, say in game week 3 against Fulham at home or game week 5 against Southampton away, it wouldn't be that bad. If we just have a quick look at what the fixtures are after that, so from game week 7 onwards, West Ham away, Everton at home, Brentford away, Leicester at home. So not terrible, but probably long-term not quite as good as Leicester's. In terms of the options, the main centre-back partnership last year was Burgess and Wolfenden. Burgess played 39 games. Wolfenden played 41. I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly. I'll practice for when we get closer to the game week 1 deadline. Burgess 2 goals, 1 assist, and then Wolfenden 1 goal, 1 assist. Now they have signed Greaves from Hull City, and from what I've read, most people expect him to start next season. He played 43 games for Hull, got 2 goals, 4 assists. So he's probably the one to look at right now. And one of Burgess or Wolfenden is going to lose their place. Again, from what I've read, it's most likely that Burgess will come out, but pre-season will give us a better indication of that. So in terms of £4 million defenders for Ipswich, if that's where you want to go, you're probably looking at Wolfenden or Greaves as the main two. Now, they do have another option, and that is Ben Johnson, right? Previously of West Ham. He's been brought in, probably going to play right back. Now, I'm not sure he'd be that attacking because most of their attacks in terms of defenders come from Leif Davis on the left, who's 4.5 million. But Ben Johnson could be interesting if he gets plenty of minutes in pre-season. But if you're buying one right now, it's probably going to be Greaves instead. If you want the most attacking defender, it's Leif Davis, right? He got a ridiculous amount of assists last season. And if he can translate that in even a small way in the Premier League, he could be worth paying 4.5 million. But I'm just not sure. I'm not sure that's worth going for from the off. Like, if the fixtures were better and they had a couple of green fixtures in there, then maybe I would do it. Like, FPL have got Brighton away as a green fixture for a defender. I just don't see that, to be honest. I think Fulham's okay, Southampton's all right. But after that, the fixtures aren't particularly great for Ipswich. And I'm just, like, it's all well and good having a lot of attacking returns in the Championship, but to step up and do that in the Premier League is a bit more difficult. Now, to be fair, players like Alfie Doughty did it last year, and at times he was in our teams. But I'd almost want to see that first, especially with Liverpool and Man City as the first 2 games. And there's lots of 4.5 million defenders from already established Premier League teams. So I've got no doubt at some point Davis will be in my team this season. I'm just not sure I would do it from the start. If you want to go for an Ipswich defender, I'd probably say Greaves. Again, if you're an Ipswich fan and I've got that wrong, let me know in the comments below. But right now, Leicester defender's probably looking a bit stronger. So let's take a look at Southampton next. The stats from the Championship have them sitting as the 5th best defence at 46.7 expected goals conceded. But in terms of the actual goals conceded, they sit at 63, which is way worse than both Ipswich and Leicester. Now, you could put that down to a little bit of bad luck. Maybe those numbers will correct themselves this season, although obviously it's going to be more difficult to keep clean sheets in the Premier League. But also, I wonder if it's partly down to Bazunu, their goalkeeper. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I've watched a bunch of Championship games last year, because I haven't. And Southampton and the fans will have a much better idea than I do. But his post-shot XG sits at minus 11.9. Now, post-shot XG is how likely the goalkeeper is to save it once the shot has been taken. And those numbers are pretty poor. I don't want to dwell on them too much, but it doesn't look ideal. So I'm not sure whether they're going to sign a new goalkeeper or go with Bazunu again this season, but potentially there might be some slight issues there. The good news is the fixtures are probably slightly better than the other 2 teams for the first 6 game weeks. So Newcastle away game week 1, Forest at home game week 2. Again, if I had to play a defender in that fixture, wouldn't necessarily be the end of the world if it lets me save a transfer or lets me move on attacker or something like that instead. Brentford away game week 3, Man United at home game week 4, and then Ipswich at home game week 5 is another fixture you could play your defender in. Then you got Bournemouth away game week 6. Just to look at a little bit later than that, if we just bring up the fixtures here. Game week 7, Arsenal away, very tough. Then Leicester at home, another fixture in game week 8 you could play them in. City away in game week 9, again, really tough. But Everton at home in game week 10. And again, you're not bringing in £4 million defenders to play every week. So sometimes it's nice to look at the weeks you might need a little bit of cover. So potentially Southampton defenders worth looking at, although defensively the worst of the 3 teams that came up. Harwood Bellis is probably the main option. 40 appearances last year, 2 goals, 3 assists. Bednarek played a lot as well, 42 appearances and 2 goals. And then Stevens only played 23 times, but I think he was injured for part of it. So they're probably the main defenders you are looking at. There's a ton of 4 million players listed on the FPL website, but Harwood Bellis and Bednarek right now are probably the 2 main ones. We'll have a look over pre-season whether anything changes. They've also got Charlie Taylor now as well. Obviously, we've seen him previously at Burnley. He's also listed at 4 million. So there could be some other options there. But if you're looking for one right now, Harwood Bellis is the man. You've also got Walker Peters, who's a bit more expensive, but even less so than Leicester. I just can't see me spending 4.5 million on a Southampton defender. Like, if I'm going to spend 4.5 on any of the newly promoted sides, it's Leif Davis to try and get those attacking returns, or I'm going to go for a Leicester defender who's probably a little bit more attacking than the centre-backs, but also playing in a stronger defence. So fixtures-wise, game weeks 2, game week 5 look okay for Southampton, but they're probably the least likely of the £4 million defenders that I would be going for. So if you're looking for a £4 million defender that's guaranteed to start, realistically right now, you're looking at Leicester, Ipswich and Southampton, but things might change as we get closer to that game week 1 deadline. So obviously I'll keep you updated on that throughout all the videos, so make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. But there are potentially a few other options we could look at. So you've got Barco at Brighton that I mentioned in my value players video. He's only made 6 appearances for Brighton so far last season, no goals, no assists. But Estepinian is injured going into the start of the season, so he's probably going to miss at least the first 3 game weeks. Then we've got an international break, and game week 4 is on the 14th of September. So potentially he could be back for that. But even if he was, if Barco starts well, maybe he could keep his place in the team. The main problem is, for anyone that's looking to buy a Brighton defender, it's United at home, game week 2, Man United, of course, and then Arsenal away, game week 3. So you've probably not got a massive shot at clean sheets in the first 3 games, although it is Everton at home, game week 1. And then by the time the good fixtures come, Estepinian might be back. So there is definitely a risk there. Mosquera is a new signing, but Kilman has gone, and there's already quite a lot of talk that he might be one of the first choice centre-backs for Wolves this season. We'll have to wait and see during pre-season. And yeah, he could be an option. But the problem with Wolves defenders is, I said this about Aït-Nouri the other day, the fixtures are just terrible. Right? They just don't have a good run of fixtures until game week 10, when they've got Palace at home, Southampton at home, Fulham away and Bournemouth at home in the space of 4 game weeks. Before that, right, from game weeks 1 to 9, they've got to play all of Arsenal, Chelsea, Newcastle, Villa, Liverpool, Man City, and even the Brighton game is away from home. So the fixtures just look rough. And I feel like even if your strategy was, I'm not going to plan a wildcard, I'm going to see how things go, I might end up using it late, like after game week 15 or something like that, you'd probably still be better off buying a Leicester defender that at least has a couple of fixtures where if you needed to rely on them, you'd probably be happier to play them. Like if you had to play Mosquera against Liverpool at home, it's not great. Man City at home, not great. Brighton away, etc. So for me, that is a wait and see. He could absolutely be one of the first choice centre-backs for Wolves, but it probably doesn't matter for the first 9 game weeks anyway. And then I've put Cresswell in, even though I don't think he's going to be an option whatsoever because people keep mentioning him. He's 34 now. He is not the first choice left back at West Ham. That would be Emerson, unless something's going to change under Lopetegui. Obviously, David Moyes is not there anymore. But I just don't see Cresswell starting. The only thing I could think of is that maybe another Premier League club might buy him and then he could get more minutes. And at 4 million, he can deliver the ball very well, might take a few set pieces, but it would massively depend on where he goes. And even if he went to one of the newly promoted sides, like he's probably not getting into Leicester, Ipswich or Southampton as first choice. So I'm not even sure where he would go. So for anyone that's kind of talked about him or asked about him, I think that's more hopeful than anything else. Like you look at his minutes last year, 431. Every season before that, pretty much, it was 2,000 plus. So he is not first choice at West Ham. He's not going to be this season almost certainly. And unless he moves, he's just not going to be an option. So outside of Leicester, Ipswich and Southampton, Barco and Mosquera are probably the most likely to get minutes, but we'll keep an eye during pre-season. So let me know if you're going to include a £4 million defender in your game week 1 squad, and if so, who is it going to be? And is there anyone I've missed out? Leave a comment below and let me know. If you've enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And I'll be back tomorrow for another video.